Elite Gaming.
What's up guys, it's Andrew at Elite Gaming HQ, and today we're doing test with Far Cry 5. This is my second benchmark video with Far Cry 5, and today we're going to test the GTX 1060. Now if you didn't catch yesterday's video, it was my preliminary test with the GTX 1050 Ti, and I decided to do that card first because it's a very common card. I'll compare some of those numbers to today's results, but honestly I wasn't so impressed. Now this is a game that I've been excited to test because I kind of started my channel on Far Cry 4.
He must be almost dead. He's like holding his head.
Holy shit.
Oh, he's dead.
Alright, so before we get into the video, I have to ask you guys, if you guys are my subscribers and you like the videos that I put out, please go to the bottom and hit that notification button, because apparently YouTube doesn't like giving our content to our own subscribers. It's a problem we have as content creators, and it kind of sucks. So if you do like my content, or you end up liking this video, just hit that bell at the bottom. It's actually kind of sad that I have to say this every video, just to get the people who enjoy watching my stuff to see the videos that I put out. But nevertheless, let's talk about Far Cry 5. So Far Cry 5 is also done on the Naya engine, which was also used for many other games like Blood Dragon, Far Cry 4, I'll put a list here, and I'll also put a list of its features. Usually this engine, and this game is not an exclusion, allows for a lot of different physical assets, and you will see that is very taxing on the video card. I mean, basically a lot of this game is played in a forest. Though it doesn't eat video memory, it taxes the video card very hard. This game was produced by Ubisoft Montreal and Ubisoft Toronto, and it was published by Ubisoft. Today the test system is my Ryzen 1700X, overclocked to 4 GHz on liquid, with 16 GB of DDR4 2400, and this MSI GTX 1060 3 GB. Now as you'll see in these tests, that 3 GB is still a champion, that's all you really need. We're going to test in 1440p as well as 1080p across all presets. The test methodology will be, well, shadow play, which will probably cost us about a 5% loss in frame rate, so keep that in mind, along with MSI Afterburner, so we can keep an eye on all the vitals to see how much RAM we're using, how much CPU, all that type of stuff. I'm going to break it down into two separate sections. One, I'm going to show you how smooth the game runs, so you see that there's no hitches, with some actual gameplay in the game, and then later we're going to break down the in-game benchmark. After using the benchmark a lot, I must say it's really good. The only problem is there's one section that kind of dips your FPS as soon as you come out of like a barn in the very beginning, and it's representative of you changing zones. Well, you don't do that a lot in this game, and since that does happen, it gives you like a false low. You think the FPS lows are a lot worse than they actually are in the actual game when you're playing. And I can show you that dip in every single benchmark graph, but it's just something interesting to note. So you should more be concerned with the average over the lows, but that's also why I put in actual gameplay. So let's jump into the gameplay. So since this is a GTX 1060, I wanted to jump right in on high, but I was a little skeptical since the 1050 Ti did so poorly. We were getting mid to low 40s in medium. And of course, you know the 1050 Ti is a 4 gig card and the GTX 1060 is a 3 gig card, but that makes little to no difference at all. So here's the high gameplay. It actually looks very amazing. It ran very well, very smooth. The gunplay was nice. I didn't see any dramatic dips, no hitches or frame rate drops. It just ran good. So after that, I decided to bump it up to Ultra, and you can take a look and see how that went. So this game has a lot of optimization problems in my opinion, and it's mainly just on your GPU. But there's a couple things to note. The GTX 1060 is a monster at 1080p, as it's always been. It's very good at compressing video and giving you very solid numbers. But one thing I do very much like about this game is they added in a frame rate locker, and you can set the frame rate to multiple different areas. So for example, if you weren't getting the desired 60 that everybody wants, you know that some place like England, for example, they usually run at 50 FPS. Well, you can lock this game at 50 FPS. It's not a problem. You can even lock it down to any specific number that you want. And I feel like that's a really good asset, because honestly, on a game that's not competitive, running it at 45, 55 FPS locked, as long as you got no dips, and if you did get a dip, it was 5%, maybe 10%, you wouldn't even notice it, that's a great feature. And that means your game's going to run really well with something like a GTX 1060. But as you can see, it runs very smooth. So the next part, let's start an analysis of what is actually limiting our FPS, and let's check out the in-game benchmarks. From there, we can decide what the problem is, because obviously everything has a bottleneck, and if there was no bottleneck, you would just have what? Unlimited frames all the time. So it's got to be something, right? That's the idea. So let's take a look. Alright, so let's look at the in-game benchmark. We'll go in order. We'll start with 1080p, low, medium, high, then ultra. Then we'll go to the 1440p. Okay, so first 1080p on low, we got a minimum of 64, an average of 80, and a max of 90. And as you look at this curve, you can see what I was talking about, where you get your minimums from. So I would say you would trust the average a little more than the minimum, or add like something like a 10% increase to your minimum to kind of get what the game's going to be like. It's safe to say that your minimum while you're playing the game will be like a 70 and your average will be like an 80. Next we move on to medium. We got a minimum of 57, an average of 70, and a max of 84. Once again, really good numbers, but to be expected, this is a GTX 1060. These things run for like $270 right now. Next we'll go to high, a medium of 56, an average of 66, and a max of 79. In high, you would have no problems at all locking at 60 FPS and playing the game. When you're locked in with something like VSync, it takes less strain on the system, so when you go to hit the spikes that were going to drop your frame to that 57, you have the available resources and you won't even move. Now let's go to Ultra. Ultra, the minimum was 54, the average was 59, and the max was 60. Once again, still amazing results. I can't really say nothing about it except for these are really good numbers. This card puts you exactly where you need. Now despite it starting to say at some points that you're getting close to the V memory, this game never actually used the 3 gigs of V memory, nor did it ever go over 8 gigs of RAM. The only time I got close to it is because I also had Shadowplay and Afterburner and all these things going. It got a little more. It was like 8.2, 8.4, and that was only in higher settings, so it's not a problem at all with 8 gigs of RAM. But just for a test, I wanted to lock the FPS at 55 and run the benchmark again, and by doing that, you see the drop is 52 on the low, which once again, that bad spot, a 54 and a 55. So if you locked your FPS at 55 on Ultra, you're going to have a really good experience. But once again, I would say you're fine with 60. A 10% frame drop is not something that you would even notice. If you didn't have the counter up, you wouldn't notice. Now, periodically, I did experience a little bit of a stutter when we were loading from zone to zone, but once again, that's probably representative of leaving this barn. All right, let's move up to 1440p. Now, keep in mind, this card is not made for 1440p by any means, but it fares pretty well. So 1440p low, we got a 44, a 54, and a 67 for our max. That's pretty solid, but it's low. It kind of looks like dog shit. I mean, it looks like you're staring out of a foggy car window and trying to drive. It's not so good. But let's go to medium, and here's where we're starting to see the V memory, where it warns us that it might be a problem, though I never seen it be a problem. When you have a V memory problem, you'll see a huge spike, like down to the teens. But we had 40 on min, 48 on average, and 60 on our max. Overall, not too bad. We are in 1440p after all, but still, this game is not optimized as well as I would wish. Like something like Destiny 2 or Battlefield 1, you could get a lot better frames. Now let's move on to high. On high 1440p, we had a minimum of 37, an average of 43, and a max of 56. Solid numbers for 1440p high, but ultra. Now my one goal with ultra is I wanted to see if we could actually play this game on 1440p ultra and 30 FPS and lock it at 30. Can we do that? Well, the answer is yes, and pretty good. We have a minimum of 33, an average of 38, and a max of 47. So what I'm going to tell you is you can probably lock this game at 35 to 40 FPS and play it on ultra 1440p, and it'll still be a good experience. Now, a non-competitive game, you can play 30 to 40 FPS and not have a problem. Some people don't like it because of how close they sit to the monitor, but for me, it's never really been a big deal. I mean, I did play consoles, and consoles were always 30 FPS, and it never seemed to bother me. So I think that this is not really a problem, but there you have it. My final analysis is the game's optimized pretty poorly because the one bottleneck is the frequency of the video card, not the video memory, not the RAM, not the CPU. It's not equally utilizing a lot of these things, but it just has a lot of assets in front of you. So there's your problem. Now I'm curious to test this game with a different CPU, mainly because this is just a GPU test and I wanted to make the GPU shine, so we make everything else stronger. But if we had to try to test the CPU, I don't know, mine fared really well, so I think that the CPU is not really a problem in this game. You could probably get away with something like a Ryzen 1200 with no problem at all. Tomorrow I'm going to run the GTX 1080 and we're going to see if we can get 1440p. Maybe we'll even play around with some 4K, but I also want to try my ultra wide, which will be 3440 by 1440p. And that's how I usually game, and honestly I try to achieve 100 FPS, which I'm not going to get in this game, but I would be happy with 50 in that given resolution, and ultra would be nice. So we'll see. I honestly haven't tested it yet. I don't know what to expect. I know we're not going to come anywhere close to the 8 gigs of V-memory that the GTX 1080 has, but we'll see if the 1080 can push through the ultra wide, along with of course the standard resolutions. So once again, if you enjoy the content, please hit the bell at the bottom because YouTube doesn't like to share my videos with my own subscribers. Go ahead and put hashtag notification squad down at the bottom. I'll be greatly thankful, and I'll catch you guys in tomorrow's video. I'm just going to let the video play out. You're going to see some gameplay, you're going to see how good it runs, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of the video and just watch some of my gameplay. But thanks for watching, guys. My name is Andrew. This is Elite Gaming HQ. Thanks, guys.
That was pretty slick.
I saw my light flash before my eyes.
What was that? Fine fucking day to quit drinking.
All right, let's roll. Hold up here. Changing position! If you don't help me, get out of it! Slice! Sick!
The cult got the drop on me like that.
Too close for comfort. Too close. Enemies here. I'm going to Andrew, down! Just try it!
Reinforcements are on their way!
Shitlord fighting! Yeah, eat it! Get fucked! Cover me! Time to...
Look east! Backup's coming for you!
Here comes the fire! Pop! Gone!
Lie down! Time to get... It's about to hit the fan! Fuck, that hurts! I'm in big trouble!
Everyone I know who got marked gets taken.
Eden's game was taking all the scrap metal from those rails to reinforce their bunkers. Ain't such a bad idea. Maybe we should look into that. Either way, it's one more step to the seeds winding up dead in the ground.
Now that we drove out the vermin, maybe we can use these rails somehow.
Hell of a job liberating that